Hello guys, this is a tutorial about how to create a database with NetBeans and how to connect to it and do some queries. We will use the database that comes with NetBeans called JavaDB, which is a version from the Apache Derby server. If you are familiar with other kind of databases like MySQL or Oracle, you can use them and you just need to include the GDBC that is required in order to connect your Java code to the RDBMS that you are familiar with. So for this tutorial, we're going to use the JavaDB. As I said, it comes already with NetBeans, so you don't need to install anything. In order to create a new database, you need to right click here in JavaDB and then click create database. You give it a name and you need to specify your username and password. These two arguments will be needed later on in our code in order to be able to connect to this database. So I will follow the example that is stated in the lecture. So the database name is called employees, and the username and password, it's up to you to set it. So I will put root for both username and password. Click OK. Our database is created, as you can see. So here I have a new item that appears, which is the employee database. I need to connect first to this database, and if you expand it here, you will find the list of tables. For the moment, we haven't yet created any table. So in order to create a new table, I need to right-click here and then click Create Table. I give it a name. We'll call it Workers. And then we need to create the different columns. Here we have 4 columns, which are the ID, first name, last name, and job title. For each one, you have to pick what is the type. For example, for the ID, it will be an integer. It's a primary key. And if you have other constraints, you have to specify them also. And you do so for the other fields. The second one is the first name. It's a varchar of size 20. And you add the other fields. So the last name, again the size is 20, and finally the job title. The name of the field should not include a white space, okay? So varchar. So now we have our table that is created. If you want to see the table or to insert some data, you can right-click on the table name and click View Data. Here you can write any SQL statement that you can run it in NetBeans. In order to be able to add some rows, you can click here, Insert Record, and then you insert the values in each field. I don't know, John Smith, and job title CEO. Okay. So here we have only one record. You can do so to add more records if you want, and here you can write any SQL statement. For now, we just created the database and the tables. We didn't write any code. So now we will create a new project and we will try to connect to the database and, for example, to read the content of the table workers. Okay? So let's create a new project, Java application called test, for example, or DB Java. Finish. Okay. So the first statement that we're going to write here is the fact that we will connect to the database. This code requires two predefined classes to be imported, which are connection and drive manager. So they are automatically imported. Let's read it. So here we created an instance from the class connection, and we are calling the method getConnection from the class driver manager, and we are given as arguments the name of our database, the username, and the password. For the name of the database, you can get it from the service tab. So if you go here, you will find the name of the database that we have created. Just don't put the last part, which includes the username and password. Okay. This statement, so it throws an exception. The method getConnection throws the exception called SQL exception. So we can either surround it with the try and catch block, or to say that even our code, the main method, it throws the same exception called SQL exception. So we will opt always for the second option. Okay. So we added the try and catch. So let's try now to run our project. We have an error appearing saying that we don't have a suitable driver for our database. The reason for this error is that the driver manager needs a driver in order to connect to the database. So we need to include the jar file, which is the driver for our database. In order to include this jar file, you can go to libraries here, you right click, and then add jar folder, and you pick the location where the jar file is saved. I don't have it in my GGK, so I just downloaded from the net and put it in my desktop. Okay, so the name of the jar file is called Derby Client. Now we can run again our code, so it's successfully executed. Now we will try to execute a select query. So first of all, we need to have an instance from the class statement, and then to run a select query. I'll just copy and paste the code, then we will try to see it together. Okay, so we included the result set. So I will use the statement that I have created in order to be able to call the method execute query. Here you can write your query. In our case, it will be select all the data from the table called workers. The result will be a set of rows. It's kind of table or array. So it will be stored in a result set. Result set is a predefined class in Java. And in order to read the content of the result set, we have different methods. For example, here, the result set is called rs. So if I click dot here, I will have all the methods inside this class. So I can go to next, last, previous, is last to test if this record is the last one or is the first one, etc. Okay. So by doing a while loop here, we will go over all the records that were retrieved using the select query, and if we arrive to the end of file or the end of our set of rows, So I will quit this while loop. Okay. Inside the while loop, I put it only one statement. So we are trying to print the data of each row. Okay. So here the get int, for example, or get string, you give it the index of the column of your table. So the get int one will will return the ID, which is the first column in our table. The rs.getString2, it will return the first name, which is the second column, etc. Okay. And by the end, don't forget to close your connection. Okay. If we try to run this code, so I will have the record that I have inserted in my database displayed here. Okay. Now, if I want, for example, to run an insert query, so I need to add a new record to my database, I will copy and paste the statement. So instead of using the method execute query, which is used only with the select, okay, we will use the execute update. So in order to run an insert query or an update or any other query except the select one, you need to use the method execute update. Okay. So I will give my query as a string. So here insert into workers values. I have 4 values, and don't forget to put quotes for the fields that are string. And for example, for the ID, this is an integer, so I didn't put any quotes. Then if we run, so this code is working. If we want to check if the record is inserted or not, we go to the table workers, view data, and so here my record is added. Okay, you can do this using the statement class or the prepared statement class. The prepared statement is more advanced class. So if you want, for example, to not bother with the simple codes, for example, here, etc., you can use the prepared statement, and you have an example in your lecture that you can follow. So that's all for the tutorial of the database. Try to do the lab, and if you have any questions, you can send them by email. Thank you very much.